Should Andrew Berry still be employed by our Cleveland Browns?
Well, let's check his track record. We teased this show with so much movement going on in the Cleveland Browns organization. There's been a big question surrounding GM Andrew Berry and whether or not he should still be in charge of anything at the Cleveland Browns, frankly. Make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and leave a comment down below on what you think. Noah, I want to jump into this right away, but the way we're going to do this, we're going to break down free agency moves. These are everything that Andrew Berry has done in his time here at Cleveland, starting with free agency, and then we'll move through each draft class that he's drafted. And then we'll end up with the UDFAs and then good and bad trades that he's made over the years. Sound good?
Yeah, let's jump into it. And it is to note that the only thing I didn't include in some of these graphics is player personnel moves. Like, I give Andrew Berry a lot of credit for retaining Miles Garrett in the 2024-2025 season off season. Yes, I said that correct. The 2025 off season is really what it was, but after the 2024 season is what I meant. So some of those kind of things, the re-signings aren't included, but this is really the acquisition part of it, because this is such an acquisition based year for this Cleveland Browns franchise, whether it be on the free agency front, in the trade market, in the drafts. And I think it's important to lay some context now that we can look back at 6 years of a body of work in all three of those facets. So let's get into it with free agency. Why not, man?
Yeah, so starting with the 2020 season, you have some names highlighted here. You put this together, by the way, so thank you for that. But you have
Yeah,
some names highlighted here: Jack Conklin, Austin Hooper. Moving on to 2021, Jadavion Clowney, Anthony Walker Jr., and then you have Corey Bajorquez, Ethan Posick, Dalvin Tomlinson, Joe Flacco. That was a
I want
notable
to
year, of course.
I want to add in too that I counted it as a free agent acquisition because he did come in off of his couch. It wasn't like he was on a roster or
That's
anything
true.
like that and then got cut. So I did give him credit for signing Joe Flacco when he did, because it was the spark to our playoff run.
Gave him life, yeah. Malik Collins and then Tevin Jenkins. Those are like the highlight reels. But it's not been all positive because you have some guys on here too that, frankly, I think fans would say, "Who's that? Who the heck is BJ Goodson?" For example.
He was a linebacker, by the way. That I'm showing my Browns nerd and fandom right now. There's some names that I didn't highlight here. John Johnson the third played decent safety for us. Troy Hill was a good slot corner for us for a while when you look at
Juan Thornhill.
2021. Juan Thornhill, Jog Thornhill, he was horrible while he was here. And then he dissed the city on his way out, so I don't
He
care.
did, yeah.
Ogbo Okoronkwo is on there, Jordan Akins. These guys all contributed. I was just highlighting long-term contributors when I was highlighting this. You could look at a Jameis Winston or a Case Keenum, spot starters at that quarterback position that did some good things for us when we needed them to. Overall, I don't think Andrew Berry does a really bad job at free agent acquisition, but I don't think it's his bread and butter. I don't think that's what he's best at. And as you'll come to see, the trade market, in my opinion, is what he does best, despite the biggest negative against him is a certain trade. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called the worst trade in NFL history. It involves a quarterback. His number is number 4. Erik, do you know what I'm talking about?
I do, and I actually have a difference of opinion with you here.
We'll get into the trades in a
We
second,
will.
so we don't got to pivot to that. Let's look at a little bit of the free agency. Erik, I want to get your take of how he's done thus far in 6 years as the Browns GM in free agency.
Not great, Bob, to quote the show. Honestly, listen, this is a mixed bag, like you're saying, but this is not his bread and butter. And what I look at here, what's missing from this chart are notable free agents in those years that he did not sign, that were available that he could have gone after. And I think that's an important point to make. I'm not going to go through them all or year by year, but he's missed more than he's hit here. And the way that I measure this is how many of these guys are still on the team. There's a few certainly, and there are guys that we plugged in that made sense at the time. Jadavion Clowney is a good example. We knew that he was a merchant that we were paying for that year, sort of thing. He helped out on the defense, etc. Like I'm not dissing moves like that. Corey Bajorquez is still here, whether he should be or not. That's a different conversation. Um, my point though is that nobody stands out on this list to me, except maybe Conklin and Posick here, that you go, wow, this has really made such an impact on our team and made the Cleveland Browns better. And that's what worries me a little bit because take out the Flacco thing. That's hitting luck. That was a Vegas style move of hitting luck. Like I give credit to them signing him, but that was a lot of luck there. But apart from that, what we really need in this offseason when we talk about you talked about free agency, you talked about trades, and you talked about the draft. We need to hit on all three. That's the reality. So
Yeah.
we need to be really tight this year. And looking at free agency doesn't give me a ton of hope.
No, it's a mixed bag for sure, and a lot of it, if you look at here, I think are duct tape solutions is the best way to put it. When you think of a Jadavion Clowney, or you think of Troy
Jacoby
Hill, I think
Brissett.
was on Jacoby Brissett for sure. You're looking even down at like Tevin Jenkins is kind of a 1 year guy. Corn Lucas was supposed to be a good swing tackle to come in here if there was an injury. Obviously, that did not pan out this year. He was one of the worst rated tackles in the NFL. So it looks to me that Andrew Berry tries to use free agency mostly as his stopgap duct tape solutions. And whether that's a positive or a negative, we don't know, because at the same time, you see him do something like bring in a Jack Conklin, who's been a multi-year starter for this Cleveland Browns team. And there may be some tackle names that come up in that Jack Conklin realm that we could bring in to help fix this offensive line problem we have.
Here's my biggest issue here, and you need context on that. Go back to that graphic because you need context here, which I think is important. 2020, we won a playoff game. We looked fantastic. We beat the Steelers, etc. So, what do we do on offense in 2021? Well, take a look at those names. Nothing. We didn't add anybody really in free agency that made a great impact on the offensive side of the ball. That's my biggest issue when we were right there. We were on the doorstep of an AFC championship appearance. And frankly, bad officiating kind of screwed us out of that. And yet we didn't add significantly to make that leap, make that push. Obviously, the next year was a down year. And if I'm not mistaken, that was the shoulder injury year for Baker. But
Yeah.
coming out of 2020, we didn't know that. And yet we didn't significantly add to this team that was like right there. They were like a step away. That's my biggest issue and my biggest takeaway here. Like on paper, some of it looks okay, but given context, they're not good moves.
Yeah, it's the teeter totter that I think a lot of people worry about when you think of how stacked our defense is. It was ranked number two officially at the end of the season, the number two defense in the NFL versus our offense, which was 32nd. It is the two
Which
polar opposites.
And look at 2025, it's another good example. You already touched on Corn Lucas. I don't think we need to touch on Joe Flacco. We thought that Flacco magic would be back. It was not. But the one name that I want to point out here, and I'll admit I was wrong on this too, but Deontay Johnson, that was a swing and a miss. There wasn't a ton of risk there, but that was your one of your star receivers that was going to come in and make an impact. And he lasted through what? Week
He
2?
he didn't even
He
make it to
didn't
the
make it
season.
to week 1?
No,
Okay.
and
So you
I
get my
didn't take
point.
the I don't take Deontay Johnson bringing him in as anything more than trying to scratch a lottery ticket, and the lottery ticket
Yes,
didn't
it
work.
was low risk, but the point I'm making is it was low risk without backup, without your good risk option. So then what we fielded at wide receiver was trash.
Yeah, that's I mean, it's all fair critiques. I think everything's on the table here because like we say with Shador Sanders sometimes with Andrew Berry, there really is some good, some bad, and some ugly when it gets to it. And speaking of good, bad, and ugly, real quick, actually, before I push us to the draft, I want you to kind of give free agency a grade. I know the grading scale thing is kind of stupid and kind of dumb and it's overplayed, but I do want to kind of put a letter grade to this. I would put a C minus. There's some good acquisitions, there's some bad acquisitions. Using it and looking at it at the lens of trying to make a duct tape solution for this roster, and that's what you're using free agency for. I don't blame him for any of his moves, but none of them are fantastic aside from Jack Conklin, Posick, Flacco, but that was a lottery bet, like you said. What grade do you give it?
I give it a D plus.
Yeah, we're
When
in
you first
lockstep
started
basically.
saying letter grade C minus is what popped into my head as well, and then I thought about it for a second longer, and I think it's D plus, but not not good by any stretch.
No, it's not good indeed. Let's kick it to the 2021 or 2020, excuse me, NFL draft because the draft is the most important thing to go on this year, in my opinion. We have two first round picks for the first time in quite some time. We have plenty of assets going into this. And Andrew Berry has an interesting draft track record. So the first round of the 2020 NFL draft, we select Jed Wills, then we take Grant Delpit, then we take Jordan Elliott, Jacob Phillips, Harrison Bryant, Nick Harris, and then Donovan Peoples Jones. So I'll just go out and say this right now. I think that there are two hits in this draft, one being Donovan Peoples Jones because of his draft position in the sixth round, the production we got out of him for the time, and Grant Delpit, who is a Pro Bowler this season. Where are you at with the 2020 draft?
Yeah, I don't think Harrison Bryant was a terrible pick either. That was the pairing with Njoku, or did we have Njoku at the time? Yeah, we did,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, we did. Yeah.
That was that pairing there to kind of bolster up and run those 2 tight end sets, in that Stefanski offense, so I thought that was a decent pick. But yeah, this isn't the worst draft of all time, except for the fact that using the 10th overall pick on Jedrick Wills, we know how that turned out. And if you're missing consistently at your first round pick, 10th overall, a top 10 pick like that, that's not good. I rate this draft as a failure because of that.
Yeah, and it's hard, right? Because I was high on Jed Wills coming out of the draft. I thought he was going to be a franchise tackle for sure. There's a lot of people that thought the same thing. When you look at, our O line coach at the time said the same thing. Andrew Berry obviously thought it because I believe Wills was the first tackle off the board, but now it is Tristan Wirfs was the best tackle out of this draft, unfortunately, and we could have grabbed him. So yeah, I'm with you. It's not a great draft. I give it like a C, C minus. You got a long term starter out of it and a guy that contributed for a decent amount of time in your wide receiver room. A lot better than some of the wide receivers you have right now, might I add.
Yeah.
But it's not much for me either. Where are you at?
Which was that Bob Wiley who was our O-line coach at the time?
It was Callahan at that time, actually, was the coach that we had going on at this. So, highly thought of individual inside and outside of the Browns organization.
Yeah, this was the attempt though to bolster that O-line, back then, drafting 2 O-linemen, in that draft, and clearly it just did not work out.
No, I thought Nick Harris was actually a steal in the 5th round as well, and he did get some good play time for us, and he ran that fullback set. You remember that?
Mhm, I do.
We're going down a memory lane path right now. But what do you grade this? I gave it a C, C minus. Where are you at?
I was around C minus, yeah.
Okay, let's kick it to the next one. You want to take this one, E?
Yeah, so in the 2021 draft, their first pick overall was Greg Newsome II. They took Owusu Koromoa. In their second pick, Anthony Schwartz third, James Hudson the third, Tommy Togiai, Tony Fields, Richard LeCount, and Demetric Felton. This draft was a little better in my opinion. These are guys that made an impact and made an impact immediately, especially with those first 2 picks.
Yeah, people will, poo-poo on Greg Newsome, but he did end up, and you'll see when we get to trades, he netted us Campbell, who has done really well for us this season, and I think will be awesome with some of the other corner pieces that we drafted later on in the draft, as well as, of course, Denzel Ward. Hitting on the top two in round one and round two, in my opinion, you can't blame Andrew Berry for JOK's injury that happened. It was one of those freak
Correct.
NFL injuries, and Greg Newsome was a long term starter for this team that netted us a better starter. So I give him credit for both of the top two picks. And it's to note, too, this was the draft that happened in Cleveland. So I give him like a C plus, B minus on this one. I don't think it's like crazy, crazy because neither player is playing for us anymore, but you can't really ding him for either player not being here because they led. One wasn't the player's fault nor Andrew Berry's fault, and the other one led to a better player. I'll give it a B minus. Where are you at?
I was somewhere around the same, B minus, C plus. This is where we kind of see the draft fall off for Andrew Berry is in some of those middle picks. Um, what should be value picks in those rounds are often misses for Berry. And looking at Togiai, looking at Anthony Schwartz is a really good example. He just never quite developed into what we wanted him to develop into. Um, and I don't know if that's more coaching and development versus draft and evaluating talent. What do you think there?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of evaluation of talent and over analyzing like metrics because Anthony Schwartz was like a track star, a
Yeah,
burner.
he
He
was the
just didn't have
speedster.
the
Yeah.
he didn't have the hands and some of the other stuff that you need to look at, I think, as a football guy. And I think we've moved more towards that and we're painting the picture to get there, but we have to get through these drafts first. I do want to give him credit for Tommy Togiai. Tommy Togiai is having a hell of a season right now for the Texans. Um, so even though he's not on the roster anymore, it ended up panning out for Togiai a little bit long term. He is a good rotational piece over for the Texans.
Why did
What
we
did you
get rid
grade it
of
to?
him?
I don't know. I don't know. I
Um,
mean, we're stacked at D tackle too, to be fair. So it's not like we're missing Tommy Togiai, but
I thought, and I could be completely wrong here, don't get me wrong, but I thought he was so slow off the ball for us. Like am I thinking of a different player or is that
no,
Togiai?
I know who you're thinking of. We're gonna get to him in a second.
Okay.
I believe it's in the next draft. But what do you grade this one? The Cleveland draft for Cleveland, in Cleveland, by Cleveland, for Cleveland, 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 Cleveland.
I think I would probably put this B minus range. I don't
Okay.
think Anthony Schwartz was a bit of a reach there, but I don't like if he had developed, he had the speed to be that guy. It just didn't pan out. So I'd say B minus.
Yeah, I think I'd even bump it to a B because I'm thinking about these late round picks. Tony Fields, Richard LeCount, Demetric Felton, they all contributed, whether it be special teams, maybe some running back plays for Felton. So, like, when you're talking about late round picks, it's a little bit different of a grading scale. If you hit on a starter in the late rounds, then you get like bonus points, in my opinion. If you hit some special teams guys that actually stick to the roster, that's about good credit for me. Let's move on to 2022, which is a fun, fun draft because we do hit on two players in this one as well, in my opinion, and Martin Emerson in the third round, Alex Wright in the third round. Martin Emerson obviously didn't play this season, tore his Achilles, but will probably be back with the team on a team friendly deal next year. Alex Wright obviously signed the extension. Then you have David Bell, who's actually retired from football already due to some medical malpractice issues that we've covered on earlier shows. Perrion Winfrey, I don't think he's in the league anymore due to his attitude problems. You have Cade York. Woof. You have Jerome Ford, which is it's whatever. He's a fifth round pick and he's contributed and had some good moments for us. Then you have Mike Woods, Isaiah Thomas, and Dawson Deaton to round that out. I think this is a pretty good draft from Andrew Berry, too, considering that he had only 3 round and below. This is obviously when the gash of the Deshaun Watson trade started to happen to this team. And to hit on two guys that are starters on the defense, I think is a completely awesome draft by him in the third round, back to back. Alex Wright, it took him some time to develop him, but God, we developed him. And I mean, he's
Yeah.
a good Batman or Robin to Miles Garrett's Batman. Some of the stuff in the middle rounds aren't great. Perrion Winfrey, Cade York is not good picks. I will never co-sign drafting a kicker ever again after the Cade York experience. And now seeing Andre Schmidt, who has bounced all around about 14 different times. And the bottom half of the roster is the bottom half of the roster. Michael Woods and Isaiah Thomas look good in the preseason, so I'll give them props for that. I guess those are sixth and seventh round picks. This is like a B plus to me, low key. Now that Alex Wright has panned out, this is almost an A minus draft for me. Actually, I those two picks where they were selected in the third round and them panning out to be where they are now for the Cleveland Browns, I'm gonna give them an A minus. Actually, where are you at with this
A
draft?
minus. Wow. First of all, Perrion Winfrey is still in the league. He was a Dallas Cowboy this year. I believe that he was on the injured reserve though, like with a back injury, but he is still in the league. That said, that obviously didn't pan out for us. My biggest issue here, you already called it out. First of all, Andrew Berry for his life cannot draft wide receiver talent. and I'm not sure what the disconnect is there because we've seen it. If we've seen it once, we've seen it a bunch of times. It you can blame the quarterback, you can blame the O-line, but we have guys that when they get out there, they just drop the passes. I mean, I don't know what the issue is here. So that's where this draft falls off for me. Like you mentioned, taking Cade York right there with that pick in the fourth round. Not a fan of that pick at all. I know
I
hindsight's
loved it in the
2020,
moment.
but
I was gonna say I loved it in the moment. He was supposed to be the next. I don't even know who to say because I can't say the guy's name anymore because he's blackballed from the NFL. He's
Justin
the
Tucker, you could
next.
say Adam Vinatieri.
Adam Vinatieri. There you go. I was gonna say Brandon Aubrey because he's another big name now. But yeah, he was supposed to be good, man.
But what does that net us? We had one of the best kickers in the league forever since the expansion in one Phil Dawson. That didn't win us any more football games. So
Right, but we also lost a lot of football games because of place kicking, Eric. You could look at it
that's
glass half
true.
full,
Uh,
glass half empty.
we also
So,
lost a lot because of Cade York. So clearly drafting a kicker was not the right option there.
but damn it, we beat Baker in I almost said California, Carolina.
Well, there's that. I probably rate this one as a B plus.
B plus. I think we're pretty close with our grades. Sometimes I'm a little more optimistic or pessimistic, and we're the inverse just a little bit, but only by a letter grade. Let's move on to 2023, Eric. Why don't you take this one away? Actually, I will take it. You could take 2024 because I want to give you your answer now. Siaka Ika is the D tackle that you were thinking about that was very slow off the ball from Baylor. He was a third round pick. He was a whiff. Cedric Tillman was a pick. I still don't know what we have in him. We've seen flashes. DeJuan Jones, to me, as a fourth round tackle to be a starter, I think is a hit in my opinion. That might be a hot take to you and Browns
That
fans.
is a hot take, man. Have you watched the penalties that he gets?
Penalties are a thing. He's
Maybe
also
he's been
not the
hurt so much that you forget, but I mean, how
the
many false starts do you have to have him commit to say that he's not the
he
guy?
was a top half of the league starter, and compared to the guys that we had back there, Levinston, Corn
I
Lucas.
don't think that's a good comparison.
Well,
Comparing better shit to shit isn't the way to go, but
getting an NFL starter in the fourth round is a big deal. Apologies for my typo. Isaiah McGuire, Dorian Thompson Robinson, Cameron Mitchell, and Luke Whippler all didn't go to Ohio State. So I don't know what happened with my
yeah, that
box
was a lot
there.
that was a lot of Buckeyes.
I was getting excited for the Buckeyes, even though they're not even in the CFB anymore. Isaiah McGuire, who is a rotational piece, was thought to maybe be the starter ahead of Alex Wright. Alex Wright emerged this year ahead of him, though. That's a good pick, in my opinion. DTR, trash. Cameron Mitchell, he's been okay. He's been like a spot starter for us. And Luke Whippler is still a interesting one. TBD, in my opinion. I give this one like
That
a C minus. Like,
Luke Whippler
there's
might be
nothing.
the biggest steal of this draft, from the Browns' perspective, getting him in the 6th round and being a serviceable starter.
We'll see. I don't think there's room to make a judgment yet, so I'm gonna leave it at C minus for now. I don't like what he did with Siake Ika. I don't like DTR, even though he was a fifth round pick with some upside. He was fun in the preseason. It's just not a great draft, but it's hard to judge draft classes when you have third round picks and below at this point. So, where do you rate it? Where are you at?
Probably a C minus, D plus range. Remind me why we didn't have a first or second round pick?
Deshaun Watson trade?
Bingo.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, the hands were pretty tight at this point. But again, missing somewhat on the wide receiver pick once again.
I don't know if it's a miss yet. I'm curious to see what Cedric Tillman looks like in a new offense with some new offensive minds in there. Um, I think the jury can still be out on him a little bit, but the clock is tick tocking, if you want to say. Eric, I'll let you take this one. I've been yapping a lot. The 2024 NFL draft. Take it away, man.
2024 NFL draft. Once again, no first round draft pick. So we took Mike Hall Jr. In with our first pick in the second round, and then Zach Zinter, Jamari Thrash, Nathaniel Watson, Miles Harden, and Jawan Briggs to round it out. For me, this was a okay draft. By okay, I mean below average, obviously. I was excited about Thrash. I think we were both excited going into this season about Thrash. Um,
He
I
got
feel
cut
like,
at one point.
yeah, I feel like we mismanaged some players along the way too. Um, I don't know. I'm not out there in practice evaluating these guys, but I thought he would get a little more of a look this year. Zinter, I thought was a decent pickup in
I
this
was high on
draft.
him. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was really high on him. Actually, we were doing podcasting and the show, it was just more so podcasting at the time, but we were doing the show when this draft went down and I was super high on Zach Zinter. So it's surprising to be where we're at with him right now, where he's still such a big question mark.
Mike Hall Jr., that's another question mark just from there's been the injury, of course,
Right.
that's derailed his development so far. So still a big question mark with Mike Hall Jr. So knowing that, like, okay draft, but I can't give it a very good letter grade because nobody here has really done much.
Yeah, Mike Hall is the interesting one. He started to really flash at the end of his 2024, his rookie campaign. And then he kind of got in the shuffle of all the D tackles and the great defensive tackle play that we had in 2025. We'll talk about that class in a second, of course. Um, it's a hard one. I'm just gonna leave it at C right now because it's like the default answer, and I think that there's still time for maybe a Zach Zinter to flourish in year 3 and finally put it together. Mike Hall to have, a really good second rounder level play. I mean, Mike Hall and one Mason Graham could be a really fun tandem, a long-term tandem on what is a pretty young defensive line aside from Miles Garrett. And Miles Garrett looks like he's about 22 still. So he can be included in that. So I guess I'm at like a C, I guess, but it's like a question mark C. Where are you at?
Um, this is like the draft of injuries because Nathaniel Watson was injured too.
Yeah.
Um, I, I'm gonna put this one at a D plus. I think. Well, no, I'll put it at a C plus. I was putting it at a D based on availability and actual playmaking, but you can't lay injuries at his feet, obviously. So I'd say C, but unfortunately, nobody in this draft really has worked out.
Not yet, and it's still early, so it's kind of hard to shift that. And I think you can lay injuries at Andrew Berry's feet if the injury history is there. And Zach Zinter hasn't been was the only one that was hurt pre-draft. He hasn't been hurt since then.
Yeah,
He just
yeah.
hasn't played.
Can I say this though? And I know it was the fifth round, so I give a little more leeway here. But if your third pick of the NFL draft is getting cut almost immediately afterwards, that's an issue for me.
Yeah, it's an
You
interesting one. I
missed.
mean,
But
they
it is the fifth
obviously
round, so
they were able to stash him back. Like he's still on the roster. They just
no,
were
I
doing it
yeah, I
to
get
maneuver the
it.
tackle situation, but it's still not a good look for Jamari Thrash and or Andrew Berry's draft acumen. Let's get to 2025, the one that we all want to talk about because it is the brightest of bright spots, I think, for him. It is his A plus. It is his. It doesn't matter what happens because he hit, in my opinion, on Carson Swessinger, Quinshon Judkins, Harold Fannin right there in the middle. Some people are jury out on Mason Graham because defensive tackle in at the fifth pick is a high mark, but Mason Graham did very well in his rookie year for
Yeah,
being a
that's
defensive tackle. It's a hard position to transition to in the NFL. And then you go to the head scratcher of Dylan Gabriel. I'm not even going to give him a mark on this. When you go 4 for 4 off the top four, in my opinion, you already won. Then you add Dylan Sampson, that has shown some bright spots, and Shador Sanders, who has, of course, shown some bright spots as well. I give this thing an A, man, and maybe it'll shift. Mason Graham, maybe he sucks one time, or I don't know. I don't think it's going to change, though. I give this an A all day, every day.
A plus. Um, Let me just break it down by player. Mason Graham, bingo, check mark. Carson Schweschinger, bingo, check mark. Defensive rookie player of the year, by the way. Quinshon Judkins, check mark. Harold Fannin Jr., check mark. Dylan Gabriel, we'll forget that one. Dylan Sampson, check mark. Shador Sanders, and I get it. I mean, it felt like collusion when we were watching the draft live because everybody was letting him fall down the draft board. best value pick of the draft, period, because of where he fell. Um, this is an A plus draft in my opinion, and this is also what saved Andrew Berry's job, in my opinion. If not for this draft, I think there's a very good chance he was packing his bags along with. I think he had a better relationship with the Haslams, I should say, has a better relationship. But there's a very good chance he was packing his bags with Stefanski if not for this draft. This is what I want to see more of. This is when we talk Andrew Laser Eyes Berry, this is what we're talking about. And you could even probably cross out Dylan Gabriel because for all intents and purposes, it sounded like that was Kevin Stefanski's guy. He still has end of the day say, so we'll still count that towards Barry, but you don't get much better than this.
Yeah, you talk about Laser Eyes Andrew Berry in this draft class, but I want to talk about it in regards to his UDFAs because I think he's done an awesome job in the realm of finding talent that weren't drafted, that are young to be on this team. We talk about my favorite, first of all. I'll go right to him, even though he's fourth down, Aiden Huntington. He was a rotational D tackle. He played a lot of special teams. He was a dog in the preseason. He is a name to continue to watch on this team. But then you think about the other two from this draft. You have Isaiah Bond, Andre Schmidt. I know Schmidt wasn't technically in this draft. He was actually on our practice squad in years past, which was interesting. I didn't realize that until I was breaking down the graphics for this show. But talking about adding rookies to this class that made an impact, Isaiah Bond as a deep threat looks promising to continue to develop and work on. And Andre Schmidt seems to be our place kicker. Knock on wood, because we said the same thing about D Hop. And then you look at Ronnie Hickman, a guy from Ohio State that went UDFA. He was a rotational role player. He's now one of our starting safeties and is doing a damn good job at it. Very underrated player on this Browns roster, in my opinion. And then you look at Muhammad Diabite. He has been a rotational linebacker. He has been in there a bunch with some of the injuries that happened, whether you look at JOK, whether you look at Carson Schlesinger going out this season. All in all, Andrew Berry in the UDFA market has done a very damn good job, in my opinion. And we don't have to grade this. We're done with the grades. I wanted to do it for the draft and the free agency. But I think this is a underrated part of Andrew Berry's game.
Yeah, Ronnie Hickman's the most interesting name on this list to me, because the fact that he went undrafted is a little crazy. This past year, I think he had 103 tackles and 2 picks. He's worked his way into being a very solid starter for us. And we've seen his campaign at Ohio State, of course, over the years. So the fact that, like, I felt like he had enough talent that he could be a late round pick. So the fact that he went undrafted and that Barry recognized that and picked him up is a very solid move. I agree with what you're saying about the rest of them. Isaiah Bond in particular. I agree with you about Huntington. You've always been hot on him, and I knew you were going to jump to that first. And
100%.
Andre Schmidt, we were unsure in week one, but we're pretty sure now he's our guy. He seems to finally have that steady leg. He needed confidence. He's always had the leg itself. He got the confidence part. And unless something really crazy happens, he should be the guy. Yeah, he's to say what the kids say, he ate here.
Oh God, you are old as hell. Let's move on to the trades because this is where I think Andrew Berry shines. And you can disagree with me. I just put the ones that I thought were good trades, bad trades, and questionable trades all together. Andrew Berry, in my opinion, does a very good job in the trade market. Aside from the Deshaun Watson trade, we will get there in 1 second. Let's have one more minute of
Disagree,
hype
but
for
go
Andrew.
on.
The Tyson Campbell trade for Greg Newsome during the season, while it was a head scratcher because of the time, it was like a Wednesday. It didn't really make sense. You were going into a division rivalry game against the Steelers.
Made
Campbell's been
perfect sense,
awesome
but
for
go
us.
on.
He's been awesome for us. We'll be totally fine. Jerry
It was
Judy,
about control, but go on.
control. Interesting. Why do you say that?
Contract, team control over
Oh,
contract
yes.
is what I
I
meant.
mean, it makes sense. It was just when the trade happened, it was weird in
Gotcha.
times of its placement in a week. The Jerry Judy trade, I think, for me, for what we gave up for him, was a very good trade. Still, despite what his season looked like this year, a fifth and a sixth rounder for a guy that was your number one a year ago, had 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
It's still your number one right now, despite needing to be your number one or not. I think that was a damn good trade. You look at Zadarius Smith. You give up 2 fifth rounders, get 2 picks back in Zadarius Smith, who is a great running mate for Myles Garrett while we developed rookies like Alex Wright and Isaiah McGuire. And then, of course, the main one, the start of the laser eyes Andrew Barry memes, the Amari Cooper trade, where we gave up a fifth and a sixth rounder, brought back Amari Cooper and another sixth rounder. So I think Andrew Barry does a good job in terms of finding the bargains, finding the deals in the trade market, and executing right away. Where are you at with Andrew Barry's trades here, at least?
These are all good trades. Again, I think they need context. I'm fully on board with the Campbell trade. We talked about it allowed for more flexibility and further team control on that contract for a very similar player. I liked Greg Newsome a lot, and I think when that news flashed, all Browns fans were pretty much like, "Why did we do that?" But it made sense both financially and the way that our defense is constructed under Schwartz made a ton of sense to add a guy like Campbell. Where that the front I don't want to break down Schwartz's scheming because we've talked about it before, but it makes perfect
Right.
sense. Here's my problems with the two wide receiver picks that you see here, Jerry Jeudy and Amari Cooper. I think they're very good trades on the whole for what we got. The problem is the strategy behind these trades. And the strategy behind these trades were that these guys were coming in to be the number one. Neither of these guys at their point in their career are number ones. I think you would probably argue that about Judy because I remember we argued it. I argued it at the time. He's a number two, and I'll give you credit. Yes, his first year he had 1,000 yard season. He looked great. But these are number twos. We never had a true number one wideout, and I'm talking about Pittsburgh going and trading this
For
year.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That kind of wideout, we've never had that, for many years here in Cleveland. Um, you
I'll
could
give you some
argue
pushback.
OBJ.
I'll give you some pushback on Amari Cooper because I think he was a wide receiver one for us during his time here. He had his best years in the orange and brown. He looked like a wide receiver one to me. My issue with the wide receiver acquisitions, and maybe this was a Kevin Stefanski thing because we love so much of that 12 personnel, the two tight end sets. Um, that we only wanted to ever add one wide receiver and not have a full room where we were adding Jerry Jeudy to be the number one. Okay, we're good. We'll figure it out from there. We added Amari Cooper to be the number one. Okay, we're good. We'll figure it out from there. And they tried to do some pieces later on. We'll get to bad trades in a second. But in principle, I get what you're saying, but I disagree a little bit. You know what I mean?
Which you bring up a good point though. We've kind of been positive in our two tight end set schemes, how we've talked about it. But I think we've been positive because we've had Njoku, we've had Fannin this year, where they can work. Bryant was paired with Njoku at one point, and it was a decent pairing. They look good, but to your point, that really limits what the offense can do, and it really makes the field a little bit smaller for what the defense has to do when you're defending against two big tight ends versus speedy receivers. So I agree with what you're saying. I hope a new coach coming in, we can rotate that in certainly, but that should not be our primary scheme on offense. Um, Interesting though, Fannin plays more like a wide receiver sometimes than a tight end. He does the tight end things right, but he has the hands of a wide receiver. So that'll be interesting to see how he's continued to be used. But I get your point.
Swiss Army knife for sure. Let's move on to the two bad trades I have. Obviously, the Deshaun Watson trade. I don't think we need to break that down too much. It's been out there. Our
Well,
takes are
hold
out
on,
there. Go ahead.
because I've been saying this whole show that I disagree that this is bad on Andrew Barry. Here's why. Yes, when I look to the right there and see what we gave up, that's awful. But I'm going to give context once again because I think it's important. There are two pieces of context here that I really think you need to take into consideration when evaluating this trade. The first is that he had little to no choice. The directive was go get Deshaun Watson, do whatever it takes. He did exactly that. So he was able to put together a trade deal and get the player to agree to come to Cleveland. It's not a win, but he did his job because he didn't have another choice. That's directive from ownership. The second piece of that, though, is that when they went into that, when they were having conversations, there were a couple other teams really, really interested that
Right.
were pushing us to offer this. Two of them being Carolina and Atlanta. The reason that these teams, including us, were interested is because his last season of full work, he was an MVP player. He was incredible. That's what we thought we were getting, and we were taking a risk because we thought if he was the franchise quarterback guy, all of that looks fine. I give up those first round. If we had drafted, or I'm sorry, if we had traded for prime Tom Brady, still a young quarterback at 30 something, then that looks incredible. The problem is hindsight is 2020 and we know we didn't. So I don't necessarily put this at the feet of Andrew Berry, but I understand why it's on this list as well.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but at the end of the day, it's still a bad trade. It's a horrible trade. It didn't work out, and that's on Andrew Berry's resume. So while I think context is important, at the end of the day, no matter what, it was a bad trade, and it's a part of Andrew Berry's resume from here on out, no matter what. The other one that's bad, in my opinion, is Elijah Moore. We get a third rounder back for a second rounder. I think that was a little bit of an overpay, especially when you look at some of the other wide receiver moves Andrew Berry has done to acquire people for higher quality talent for much less. And then Elijah Moore, I don't even know. I think he got cut from a team. He was on the Bills at one point. He's not doing anything of note still in his NFL career. So this was a
I think
big
he's a
whiff.
Bronco now. If if that makes sense. This was just an overpay and an overreach. He did have his best season in Cleveland in 2023. But that's not saying much. This is a guy that's never eclipsed 1,000 yards. He's been in the league for what, 5 years now.
Right.
And he's has like a little over 2,200 receiving yards total. Like he's just not a great receiver. And to give a second rounder to the Jets for him was, like you said, a massive overreach.
Even though you do get a third back, I don't think it's the worst trade in the world. But dealing with day two capital for a guy like Elijah Moore, I'm not a fan of it personally. And then I put together the two questionable trades. And the one is the Jags trade from the draft this year. I put it in questionable only because we haven't seen the full details of it, what Travis Hunter is going to become, if it's a win-win, what our first rounder that we got from them is going to contribute to, whether that be a trade up in the draft or adding more offensive talent to this team and what they look like. So I put this at questionable, not because I think it was a bad idea. I put it at questionable just because I don't think there's an answer yet. The other one that I put as questionable was the Amari Cooper trade where we got a third round pick. And the only reason I put it there is because we used that third round pick to draft Dylan Gabriel. That's what that third
Yeah,
round pick was for.
I
So,
think both of these trades are actually that they should be marked in the good column. What we received from the Jaguars, that was a haul, and uh, it didn't make sense. We had our guys picked out, and I think they called it pretty well to how they fell in the draft too. So I don't think like what we got for him was perfect, and that second first rounder next year is going to be nothing but good things for Cleveland. Hopefully, fingers crossed. In terms of the Amari Cooper trade, same thing. I thought it was a good trade at the time. The fact that we misused that pick, that's not on the trade itself, but I see where you're going.
yes, indeed. Eric, I'm going to bring us back full screen. We've gone through the whole body of work. We've run a lot longer than we typically do on the page. So if you're still here with us, we really do appreciate it. Let us know what you think of Andrew Berry down in the comments below. Answer the question: should the Browns have stood by Andrew Berry and kept him for at least another year? What is your thoughts?
My thought is yes, with an asterisk. First of all, how I grade Andrew Berry overall is a C plus. Um, I always want to answer the question, if you're going to let go of a guy, and for some people it's just time, and that was the case with Kevin Stefanski. But
Right,
if you're going to get rid of a guy, who are you replacing him with that makes your team better? I
right.
think Andrew Berry is a very intelligent person. What I wanted to see this year, and we're not seeing it, I wanted to see Andrew Berry kind of elevated within the organization a little more. Um, Working on strategy, still working on draft, but not necessarily being the GM, bring someone in as GM or who could even be under Barry to learn from him, but be making some of these football decisions. We're not seeing that. Um, but I agree with keeping him for now. Now, if he misses again, if we don't improve this team, and it's very clear to everybody now that we know what we need, uh, like, if it's not marketed improvement next year, then I think he has to go. My fear, though, is waiting a year and not doing it all at once. How is that gonna disrupt the organization? It could have been cleaner to do it this year, bring in a new GM, bring in a new coach that are aligned, especially when there's no lack of available coaching right now. That could have just been cleaner organizationally. So it worries me that if we are in that position next year where we say, okay, or the year after, whatever, we're ready to move on from Andrew Barry, is that going to set us back another 2, 3, 4 years? And now we have to worry about the coach at that. Like, the misalignment is what scares me here.
It's what scares, I think, most Browns fans because you're starting to get into that dysfunctional territory that we saw in the early 2010s, where you might bring in a coach and then you're firing both of them together to start clean. And then you're going through this whole cycle of hire, fire, hire, fire yet again. And I think that's what's dangerous here. But I also think it's very in line with all of the thought process of everything that's gone on with Andrew Barry, with Jimmy Haslam since Andrew Barry's been brought on. It's that calculated risk. I think Jimmy Haslam believes in Andrew Barry to the highest extent. And because of his recent track record, because of the draft, because of some of the UDFAs, because of his ability to fleece GMs in trades sometimes, and Jimmy Haslam is giving Andrew Barry one last chance here. Now, hopefully, that's a bet that pays off, unlike the Deshaun Watson trade. But if it doesn't, then we're in for some more dysfunction. And we have a dome looming, and Jimmy wants to pack that dome. So we'll see if Jimmy bet right for the first time in his life. Well, at least in the orange and brown. He's probably bet right a couple times considering he's a billionaire. But
So did he though? What's
ultimately,
your take?
did he what?
Should we have kept him? And what's your letter grade?
I was getting there. I
You're
think
rambling.
I'm you ramble every episode, man. Can you tell we've been going for a minute? Anyway, I think I stand by Andrew Barry. I think that there's been a lot of negative press around him and some of his classes. I've seen a lot of improvement. You think of the Alex Wright draft class that he brought in here that was originally thought of to be a bad draft class because of Cade York and whatnot. And overall, I think he's done a fine job as GM, especially with having his hands tied for some of the Deshaun Watson trade assets that were out. You mentioned Jimmy Haslam's whole directive to go out and get Deshaun Watson. How much does that lay at Andrew Barry's feet? We don't know. Jimmy Haslam's taken the most blame for it, so we have to go off of that, even if it's the truth or not. So yes, I think it was the right decision to stick with Andrew Barry, barring a Coach Harbaugh wanting him to be gone. And if that's the only hang up, then you need to look at what you need to do to take care of that. I give him like a C plus two, Eric. He's been fine. It's hard to evaluate when you don't have first round picks at the end of the day, because that's one of the main things that really contribute to team success is continuously pumping in good young players at high overall positions.
I want to compare Andrew Barry directly, though, to the previous GM, Mr. Dorsey, Buddy Boy himself. He's had his issues, don't get me wrong. Like, obviously, he clashes with ownership. He's got a very strong personality, but when he was our GM, it felt like we were going out and we were making splashy moves every other week. And I'm not a fan of splash for splash, but you bring in guys like OBJ, like marketed players that have talent, and we were convincing them to come to Cleveland, guys that were helping to turn around the culture. Like Jarvis Landry, I don't know that there's ever been a better player in Cleveland to help turn around the culture of the Cleveland Browns. Especially, I mean, that's post 0 and 16. Like think of the teams, right? And you were
Yeah.
convincing players to come here and make an impact. I just haven't felt that way with anything that Andrew Barry's done. You tell me if you feel different. Like, this past draft class was incredible, yes, but when we talk trades, when we talk free agency, nothing's made me sit up and get that push alert and go, "Holy shit, we just signed X." That's my frustration a little bit.
Amari Cooper and Deshaun Watson in the time, I guess, because it
Well,
was
yeah,
like
fair.
we actually pushed through and got the trade after he said no. I think everything you said is a fair critique of Andrew Barry. I think everything I've said is a fair critique of Andrew Barry, not just your take right now or my take right now, but the whole damn episode, the ups and downs. He, at the end of the day, is an NFL GM, and it's not a job of perfection. It's a job of trying to be right as much as possible. And I think he's had some
Mm,
streaks and
it's a
he's had
job
some
of relationships, though, and what I'm
that too.
bringing into question here is, does he lack the relationships with other NFL GMs, that impacts how we make deals? I don't know the answer to that, but, like, there's people talk
I don't
about.
I don't think that's true though, Eric, because you don't get a
I'm
trade like we
asking, I
did.
didn't say it's true, I'm asking
Yeah,
the
no,
question.
I disagree with it because I think when you look at Jacksonville or you look at some of these trades where we give up low grade assets to get high grade players, you have to have a good relationship. You have to have at least a really good art of persuasion inside of you to go out there and do something like that. So I think his relationships are fine. I think his ability to trade is fine. I think there's some question marks when it comes to the draft and free agency talent coming in. And I think that's the main way we're going to add talent to this roster next year. And that's what scares me, but it's the gamble we're taking, and I don't think it's the worst gamble in the world. I think he gets too much flack sometimes.
Let me ask you one final question, and it regards the Deshaun Watson, acquiring. Do you think that because we gave up so much that that's impacted how other teams view us and they feel like they can fleece us in the future because we're desperate?
No, because we ended up trading Amari Cooper for a third round pick still. And that trade is a good trade on paper until you see what you've used the third round pick on. So, no, I don't think so. I think Andrew Barry does a good job of dealing what he needs to deal. It was rumored with Deshaun Watson that it was 3 first round picks to get him. So, we weren't the only team putting it out there. It was about adding the zeros and the commas and the dollars and the cents to get Deshaun Watson to just be okay with coming to Cleveland that really pushed it over the edge.
Fair, and I'm just here to ask the questions. I don't disagree with what you're saying. Listen, the fact is, Cleveland has work to do. They have work to do in the front office. They have work to do under ownership. Obviously, they have work to do to find the right coach. What's exciting is that there's going to be some more alignment. Don't forget that Andrew Barry came into this organization at the exact same time as Kevin Stefanski. So Kevin Stefanski wasn't his hire; they were brought in together.
Together,
Now Andrew
tandem.
Barry is leading this search. Maybe we'll see a little more unity. I know they claim that, I don't care, their offices are right next to each other. They claim that harmony, but I never bought it. I don't think you ever really bought it. And it certainly seems like there was friction there this year. So maybe that will be resolved now.
Maybe it will indeed. I am so curious to see how this offseason continues to play out. Daniel Oyefusi had an article that came out that said this is the most important 120 days for the Cleveland Browns to get it right. And I couldn't agree more. We will continue to cover it here at the office. But for now, we are clocking out for the weekend. Everyone go out there, be safe. The world is crazy right now. So make sure you're being safe. Take care of one another. Show love, show compassion, all of that kind stuff. Eric, hit the saying, man.
What saying? Just kidding.
Yours.
The show never, or the debate. Now I'm just off. Now I'm just off. All right. The debate never ends, but the show does for now. We'll see you next time.